Good evening. Let me hop up in this high chair. I don't need any comments. No comments needed. Hold on, let me get set. All right. Well, I think a lot of you know me. My name's Devin Tharp, and this is my beautiful wife, Tia, my teammate from 22 years for the last 22 years. And we've got a picture of our family as well up on the screen. That's our son, Leighton, and our daughter, Brinley. And now that we're over halfway through Re-Engage, you've been able to hear lots of stories from different couples, both on the screen and both live as well. And we just want to share a little bit of our story, our marriage journey, how God strengthened our relationship with him and also with each other.
And just to give you a little bit of background, so Devin and I grew up in different states. He's from Ohio, and I'm from North Carolina. And even though we were in different parts of the country, we had a lot of similarities in our growing up years. We both are from loving Christian homes, and those homes provided an incredible example of faith and helped launch us into our own faith. And then we met in a small college in Kentucky.
Yeah, Tia and I met on the first night of freshman orientation. There were games and activities where we got to interact with different students. And at the end of the night, there was this big table of cookies. And she asked me to go get a cookie, and I obeyed. And evidently, that was a good first test question for a husband. Like, if you'll obey, you're husband material. So that started the relationship.
He did get me a cookie, and that stood out to me for whatever crazy reason. And I was very intrigued by him. And we started off as friends, and that was good because then I got to kind of see him in his own environment and hanging out with other people and got to see his heart for the Lord and for his heart for others. And then we did start dating in September. So we met in August in freshman year, started dating in September. And then by Christmas, we knew it was forever. However, we still had many years of college left. So we dated all throughout college, even when I transferred to another one to pursue a different degree. And we had lots of adventures and experiences together. And then we were married just after we graduated from college. So we were married June of 1999. And then in that fall, Devin started seminary. So we were married, he's starting seminary, he's following his call to full-time missions, and I'm working at a horse farm. And those marriage years, those early years of marriage were like full of challenges and moments where our strong personalities did not always align. And we had many moments of fighting and bickering and just not seeing eye to eye. And we have both the tendency to be stubborn and probably made it harder than it really needed to be.
Hence, we're talking about conflict tonight, right? That was your lesson. So those arguments were often magnified because of school and work. We just didn't have a whole lot of time together. We weren't intentional about our time together. We had school, we had work, we put our careers as our priority. And at times, I think we both felt very disconnected and distant, but we really longed for our relationship to get stronger and be strengthened.
And there were moments where I felt like I had to compete with Devin in an argument or even for his attention. And there were times also where I didn't always feel like he'd have my back in a difficult situation. So this put me kind of in a defensive posture mentally and emotionally, and that created roadblocks in our intimacy and trust in our marriage. And then about 6 years into our marriage, I started feeling like God could use my gifts of working with horses and then our combined heart for the next generation. Like somehow God could put this together. I just didn't know what that would look like or how he could do this or how he could even bring the dreams of horse girl and preacher boy together.
But during the initial kind of budding of this vision that Tia had in her heart, we'd settled down. We bought a house. We started a family. Leighton, our son, is our firstborn. He joined the family in 2006. And Brinley made her appearance a couple years later. And so in addition to the process of us figuring out what God was trying to say to us about our future and what he was asking us to do, we were also in a season that we really loved. I mean, we were first-time parents. We were building the foundations for our family. And that was a lot of fun. There was challenges along the way. I mean, I wrote down here, however, the reality of diapers, soccer games, and a busy church schedule made the possibility of the dream that God had kind of started to craft in her heart seem really, really, really far away.
And right after Leighton was born, I discovered a place that rescued horses and put those horses with hurting kids together. And I knew this was an example of what God wanted us to do. He was calling us to start a ranch where we could point hurting kids towards Jesus, and we could use horses to do that. But this was just this little tiny kernel, this beginning thought. I really didn't know what God could do with that. And because of where we were and because of what was happening in our lives and our stage of life, I really just didn't see how this was all going to be. And I thought that maybe that would just continue to be a dream that was locked inside my heart. And because of that, this was a really dark time for me. Looking back, I'm pretty sure I was dealing with depression. My emotions were up and down a ton. And I really struggled with my source of identity. And I was not involved in the horse world at all, which usually brought me a lot of joy and was an outlet for me. And I didn't have that at the time. And I remember feeling empty and that like what I was doing didn't really hold any significance. I mean, I loved my kids. I still love my kids. It's not that a past tense. I still love them. But I felt like God had designed me for more than just changing diapers and wiping noses. And then I felt guilty for that. Like, shouldn't I just be happy being a mom and a pastor's wife? Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I struggling with all of these things and wanting something more? I just felt like a mess and just lost in the midst of all of those things and wondering where God was, and because he kind of felt silent in that whole period of like learning about the vision and waiting for that to come to fruition. But what I learned is that God is not silent in the waiting, and he had so much to reveal to me about his character and about who I am and what I needed to do and learn and grow, and he was preparing me and preparing us for what was next, what he was calling us to do.
And for me during this season, I really started to question the validity of this vision from God that Tia had. I really did. I started to wonder, like, if you just want to have horses in the backyard, like, we can figure that out. But let's not go to this, let's start a nonprofit kind of extreme. And so I really questioned the vision. I really had a lot of doubts about that. But so we started having some really honest conversation about the deep desire of her heart and what the Lord seemed to be doing in her. And I really came to understand that it truly was a deep desire coming from a pure heart of conviction and calling, and the Lord had placed it there. But to be honest, I was not with her yet in that vision. I had not really caught the vision. I had a lot of lingering doubts, and I was somewhat reluctant to move forward. So then in May of 2010, Tia and I traveled to an informational clinic in Oregon, the state of Oregon, put on by a ranch there. And over the 4 days that we were there, we got to experience what they did with horses and with kids. And we got a lot of the questions I had were answered. And really, I came to a place of understanding the vision that God had given to Tia. And it really was hers. It was just up to me to support it. And God enabled me to come to a place of personal conviction in my heart that this was something we were supposed to pursue together. And up until that point, I would say I was about half on board. But at that time, I really felt like, okay, I'm all in. Let's go do this together.
So we were finally on the same page about pursuing this vision, and then Devin and I began to talk through our next steps. So we met regularly every week to talk through the next steps of what does it look like to start this, and then most of the time we would argue and fight about it. Conflict was a regular part of these weekly meetings, and many times it would end in like angry words or tears, and this brought out so many of our conversational issues and our communication problems and just our selfish desires through all of that. We were going to have to work on ourselves, and we were going to have to ask God to mold our hearts to even have a conversation about this each week.
Yeah. But because the ranch was a mission and vision for us together, it was going to take both of us working together in partnership, and it required everything each of us had to bring, the gifts and the strengths that God had given each of us. It also required complete trust and collaboration. And of course, we had trusted each other in any number of ways, but I felt like this was kind of a new level of trust and leaning into each other. And of course, in addition to that, we had to really begin to trust God, because it was a huge risk what we were about to do. Now, I look back and I realize it wasn't a risk in God's economy, but in my human perspective, it was a risk. And we were going to have to lean into trusting in God and also trust each other. And throughout the process, God, it's amazing how he continues to work. He brought forth this verse that I memorized when I was a kid in church. My favorite verse of Scripture, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. You all probably know it. If you've been in church a while, you've heard this verse. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And God really convicted me that I wasn't really willing to step out and trust him completely or fully. I felt the need to try to control things, to try to control this vision. because I felt like the weight of resourcing the vision was on my shoulders. But I realized over time I didn't need to control it. I needed to surrender it. Hence the tissues. That's when God, through the power of his Holy Spirit, helped me see that it was his vision. It wasn't mine. It was his. We were simply stewards of it. And God was calling me to a new level of trust in him, a deeper level than I had ever experienced before. And on the front of collaborating with Tia, the struggle for me was that typically I had the vision for ministry, and then she supported me in that role. But in this case, Tia had the vision, and I needed to support her. So this role reversal for me was really, really difficult. And at the time, I had a great position in a good church where I had lots of influence. God had really blessed and grown the ministry that we were leading together. And it was easy to want to remain in that position where I could stay in the comfort of that season rather than venture out and start fresh. But I knew that obedience to Christ was on the line. So looking back, I realized I was just simply scared. I was anxious. I had to learn how to support and encourage my wife the same way that she had supported me and encouraged me through many, many years of ministry in the church.
So in 2013, through God's grace, we moved back to the Carolinas and to be a part of Good Shepherd and to begin embarking on this vision of pursuing the ranch. And I was excited and I was scared because I really didn't know how God was going to turn a dream into a reality. And I had to really lean on him and had to lean on Devin through this whole process. We needed the Lord to guide and to provide, and we needed to trust each other like never before.
And as we launched the ranch, even though we were doing it together, because of my job and my calling to the local church, I had limited time to give. And Tia's role as executive director had complete authority over all the decisions at the ranch. And I had to learn to support her and the ranch with my limited time, my energy, and skills. And that was honestly just new for me to recognize that she was in charge and I needed to support her. So initially, I would say I failed miserably in the first year or two, which is why we had a lot of conflict. I was trying to control things. And one of the greatest things that Tia needed in that season from me was encouragement. And so often, I didn't offer it.
And meanwhile, I was stubbornly and defiantly holding on to my position as executive director. I wanted to be trusted to make those decisions. So I started to shut Devin out. And it took quite a bit of time for us to be honest with each other and to really open up and discuss and share about our hurts and our hopes of what we both wanted to do in this process. And the Lord was working on our lives individually as well as our marriage, so that helped launch those conversations forward. We spent time praying and asking the Lord to shape our hearts and make us more like him. And we began to see that we really could work together, that we are a team. And we wanted our marriage to be the foundation for the team that we wanted to develop for the ranch. And through that season of difficulty, we began to define our roles with greater clarity and understanding. And so working through those expectations helped our marriage grow. And it helped us to support each other and trust each other, and therefore our marriage became stronger. We no longer felt like we had to compete in arguments or compete for, who's going to make the final decision on these things, because we were on the same team. And I felt seen and heard and valued by Devin and by the Lord, which just brought so much joy to my heart.
And throughout this season, the Lord helped me see that for the better part of 15 years, Tia had faithfully served as my number one volunteer in student ministry, my fan, my encourager in everything that I had led. Now I had the opportunity to provide that same level of support and encouragement and love for her. And I started to really lean in to the background role of the ranch hand. And it was humbling. And I prayed a lot for humility in the early years of ministry. And it's amazing how when you pray that prayer, God will provide opportunity to humble you. And so he did. He humbled me again and again. And I want to be clear, though, I wasn't devalued in my role. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I was valuable because of the role I got to play in supporting her and the ranch with the opportunities that God had given me. And
so we see now that God had to change our individual hearts in order to strengthen our marriage. We didn't just fall in love to be together. God brought us together for a reason. Our marriage is not just about our love for each other. It's about accomplishing something that God has put on our hearts that he will use to build his kingdom and bring him glory. We love that we have a combined mission, and when we grow closer to Jesus, we grow closer to each other. And through that process, our love for each other has deepened.
We've learned that. I've learned not to hold the mic too close.
Okay.
We've learned that we're a lot stronger together. And when we operate as a team, God can do amazing things through us, not because we're great, because he's great, and we're willing to be vessels. And that strength comes through the clarity of expectation and roles, as Tia's already shared. But more than anything, it also comes through obedience to what God has called both of us to together. And together we know that God's using us to reach the hearts of the next generation and point them to Jesus. And while we're only stewards of the vision, we get to enjoy the blessings of trusting the Lord with each step. And our marriage is better, it's stronger, it's more deeply connected as a result.
Yeah, and as Devin said, we're seeing that we're stronger together, that we're a team, and because of that, we're much faster to apologize, admit when we're wrong, and seek forgiveness and reconcile than we ever were in those early years of marriage. We have a greater respect and appreciation for each other now, too, and we're not competing against each other or for the decision-making process, and so I feel safe and valued, and our intimacy is richer and deeper.
We discovered, too, that in every conflict, there is opportunity. In every crisis, there is a chance to grow. And through the years of conflict that we had to work through, God enabled us to grow in our relationship with him and our living relationship with Jesus, which in turn fortified our marriage, a greater foundation. So there's a strand of confident hope woven through every conversation that even the ones filled with misunderstanding and disagreements can lead to growth. And in addition to that, we discovered along the way that we needed quality time together. In the early years, I think we just kind of left that up to chance, but now we're very intentional about prioritizing our time together. Our time together continues to provide the connection we need and improve our relationship to make us feel valued with each other and also to pursue fun and adventure together.
And I already said I'm a horse girl, so sometimes I see and kind of describe our relationship kind of in terms of using horses as an illustration. So when I think of our relationship, I think of us like two workhorses that are harnessed together. And if you think about that kind of image, if they are pulling against each other, like we talk about our conflict as our reoccurring issue, if they're pulling against each other, there's no forward movement. Those horses aren't accomplishing much at all together. But if they are working in tandem together and they're pulling together, they can do so much more in that way than they could do individually. So pulling together as a team of those horses does far more than an individual horse could do. And that's the way I see our marriage. We are a team, and when we pull together, God can use that to do a lot of things, and he can make our marriage, it's not perfect, but he can make it beautiful. And we love doing life together and serving the Lord side by side.